Good morning, my lovely students. Hope you are all fine. Today's session is about the sexual and asexual reproduction of plants. As we know before, that plants, like other living things, they have to reproduce. The reproductive organ or reproductive part of a plant is the flower. So, what are the stages of development in flowering plants? What is the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction of plants? And what is vegetative reproduction by identifying its forms? So, sexual reproduction is the reproduction by which a new individual is formed from a fertilized egg, issued or produced from the union, meeting or fusion of male and female reproductive cells. Based on our knowledge, the female reproductive cell is the ovule, while the male reproductive cell is the pollen or pollen grains. Sexual reproduction in plants can pass in four main steps or four main stages in order. They are pollination, fertilization, fructification, and germination. Let's start with the first stage. Pollination is when the pollen grains or pollen grain come from one flower to another flower, or sometimes the pollen comes from the same flower. Pollination may be two kinds or two types, direct and indirect. Direct pollination is when the pollen comes from the same flower, while indirect pollination, as shown in the adjacent document, a pollinator, which is the bee here, may transform the pollen grains from one flower to another. It means from the stigma of the first flower to the stigma of another flower. Next step or stage is fertilization. In this stage, as we know, fertilization means the union or fusion of both male and female sex cells or reproductive cells. Each pollen grain grows a pollen tube downward to the ovule. The nucleus of the pollen grain may fall down to the ovule. One pollen tube only reaches the ovule, where a nucleus of a male cell joins with the nucleus of the female in the female cell. So fertilization is the union of both the ovule and the pollen grain. The third step or stage is fructification. It means fruit formation. In this case, or in this step, the petals, the colored parts of the flower, and the sepals, which are the green parts or green leaves of the flower, fall down and dry out. Then the ovary enlarges and becomes the fruit. While the ovule inside the ovary, the female reproductive cell, may transform and become a seed. Last step or stage is germination, which is the early growth stage of the seed or a plant baby. When the seed germinates, it absorbs water, which causes food storing tissue to swell and crack. When it cracks, it opens the seed coat, and a young root grows through the cracked seed. The seed is made up of three different parts. The seed coat, which is the cover or outer part of the seed that protects it. The embryo, which will become a new seed. And this inner part inside the seed is the food storage. This is all about the sexual reproduction and its types. Let's move now to asexual reproduction. How do plants reproduce asexually? We have to know that asexual reproduction is also called a vegetative reproduction or vegetative propagation. This type may be natural or artificial. Natural by forming bulbs, tubers, runners, etc. While artificial may be in three kinds: cutting, layering, and grafting. Let's move to each part. So, vegetative propagation is using plant cuttings to reproduce plants from existing plants. This is its meaning. Here, there are different types of asexual or vegetative reproduction. First one is cutting. Look at the parent plant. This is the parent plant. Cut at slant. When we make cutting, we plant this cut part into the soil and it will move and grow into another plant. Next one, grafting. When we move the stem of one plant and insert it into the stem of another plant. This is grafting. Third one, layering, as shown when the plant comes on the soil, on the surface of the soil. Budding, by making tubers like the onion bulb or potato plant by making tubers. This is all about the reproduction in plants by making sexual or asexual reproduction. See you later. Goodbye.